seen this before. I believe that I'm not here to teach you anatomy and physiology. I think I'm here to teach you how to be good people. I think I'm here to teach you how to care for each other and how to help each other and how to be supportive of each other. And the word that we use and that I will try to use a number of times through the term is empathy. So we're going to start out with this 4-minute video, and please pay attention and do not take notes. Yes?
Can you maybe close the blinds a little bit so it's less
Yes,
bright?
we can. And anybody who wants to stand up and volunteer to do that would be more than welcome to do that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. You're going to get to see it in 3 as well. Comments? I think that video is kind of cool because it shows a lot of people that are in really happy times, and it shows people that are in very, very difficult times. And is there anybody here who hasn't been through either one of those? We all have. And we don't know what our life situations are throughout this room. And you don't know what my life situation is either. But damn it, I want you to treat me nice. And I want you to treat each other nice. Okay? Show me a little empathy. And show each other empathy. And help each other out. Because that's what this is all about. This is not, you heard what you're all planning on going into. There's not one of you that's here wanting to go to work on Wall Street and make a ton of money. There's not one of you that's here wanting to be an entrepreneur or some money-making deal. You're all trying to go into a profession, a healthcare profession, and I'm sure it pays more than what you're making right now, but maybe not. You're not going to get super wealthy, but you're going to do okay, and you're really going to help the world. Okay. I only offer extra credit in this class for one thing, and that's for donating blood. And you can earn 5 points for extra credit for donating blood. And I don't care whether you donate blood or whether you try to donate blood. And to be honest with you, I don't even care because I know a lot of you will get rejected. There was a couple girls last term that weighed like 80 pounds, and they won't take their blood if you weigh that little. So, just so you know, I've had students in my classes that had AIDS. I've had students that were HIV positive. I've had students that have got all kinds of hepatitis and things like that disqualify them from donating blood. But that's not the point. The point is you don't get paid for donating blood. It's a volunteer act all the way around. I really like it because I think of it as my diet. I lose a pound every time I donate a pint of blood. I think I'm up to about 36 or so, maybe more. But what I'm after is not the 1 unit of blood that you might give here at the blood drive next month. What I'm really after is that a few of you will become lifelong blood donors and donate every 6 weeks the rest of your life. It's a really good habit to get into. When you're in healthcare, you see the need all the time, and so I hope you'll take me up on that offer. Okay? Seems like there was something else important I was supposed to talk about. Maybe I should look at my list. So now I've lost my list. Oh, there it is. Okay, let's talk about the generic schedule here for just a minute. If y'all would look at it real quick, let me tell you that the exams are not correct on it. We will take our lecture and lab exams on the same day each time. People went, oh no, we can't take 2 exams in a row. Yeah, you can, and it's pretty easy. We do the written exam in here. We take a 15 or 20 minute break. We go over to the lab and do the practical exam. It's not a big deal. It's the same material, remember? So there's no reason to separate the studying for it or anything like that. And instead of wasting a whole week, which is what happens when you split them up, we'll just waste a day. Not that testing is a waste, but it's something to do. We'll talk about the syllabus on Thursday. Please read it through. And if you have any questions, ask me on Thursday. Let me talk to you about the way lab works. I get, you guys fill out these little evaluation forms at the end of each term, and you tell me everything I did okay and everything I did wrong. And the one I most commonly get telling me what I did wrong was that I didn't do enough in lab. Well, that's because a lot of y'all really want to be guided through the labs by mama, and I'm not mama. This is college. You're big kids now. You're adults, and I don't lead you through lab. I give you this big-ass lab book and say, learn it, and that's the way it works, okay? The assignments are very clearly written out here on the schedule over here, and the biggest point I make about this is that this is not a calendar. In other words, this is not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. As much as you guys want to make it that, it's not. You see, it just says week of, and it says the text, the subject during the lecture, the chapters we're covering during the lecture, the labs we're doing that week, and what lab manual exercises are involved. Okay? So, keep this close by, keep this at hand. This is the one thing I would recommend you carry around with you. And I'm not going to make you into lab partners. Mostly we just kind of go into lab the first day and everybody sits down, and most people learn to make those people into their lab partners, but that doesn't always work. So I'm thinking maybe what we'll do is we'll kind of assign seats in lab maybe next Tuesday. So that gives you 2 days to kind of chat amongst yourselves and see who maybe you want to be partners with. I can tell you so many stories about lab partners. Dr. Sessions, we just can't stand that guy. He wants to sit at our table and we just don't want him. All he wants us to do is do all the work and tell him about it. Well, just fire him, you know? I'm not in the business of firing people from lab groups, okay? You guys are big children. You're big adults, you know? You can deal with those things yourselves. And so and when we get to the end of the term, you can write whatever you want, but I'll just tell you up front, I'm not going to lead you through every lab. I will kind of introduce them. I usually talk for a few minutes in the lab, and I am more than happy to come over, put your hand up, call me over, I'll look through your microscope with you, I'll help you with your dissection, I'll do whatever I can to help you, but otherwise, you're on your own. Some people really like being on their own. They don't want me around. They would like to just go into lab and have 1 hour and 20 minutes to do whatever they want. And they figure that any minute I spend talking is wasting their time because they have an outline of what they want to do that day in lab. So just know that's the way I do it. That's the way lab works. Quizzes. We'll have 6 quizzes during the term. I'll tell you when we're going to have them. I'll tell you what day we're going to have them on. I won't tell you whether we're going to have them in here or whether we're going to have them in lab. And I won't tell you whether we're going to have them at the beginning of lab or at the end of lab. I'll just tell you we're going to have a quiz next Tuesday. I'll tell you what it's going to cover, and that's it. Okay? If we take 6 quizzes, you get to drop 1. So if you miss a quiz, sorry, too bad. You just dropped your quiz, okay? But that's okay. That gives you some fluidity. If you know you're going to miss a quiz and you write me an email and tell me ahead of time why and that you want to take the quiz early, I might let you do that, okay? Or I might let you take it late, but at least you told me about it ahead of time. That's worth a lot. You can audio record or video record anything that goes on in this room. A lot of times there'll be a number of recording devices left laying out here for lecture. My favorite story on that one is Kristen Nasta, who's now at the University of Oregon Health Sciences Center in nursing. And she would record every lecture. And I also had them recorded, and they're up on D2L. You can find them up there as well. And she would play them when she would go running every day, and she would play them while she was doing the dishes, and she would play them while she was cleaning her house and all that kind of stuff. And she would listen to each lecture 2 or 3 times. And she got to the end of the class, and she came up to me and she said, Dr. Sessions, I just want to tell you, that last night my husband told me that if he ever hears your voice again, he's going to kill me. He has listened to every lecture in A&P, and most of them 2 or 3 times, because a lot of times she would play them on the stereo system. So that was her way of learning. She was a verbal learner. Everybody has their own way of learning. Some of you are auditory, some of you are visual, some of you are, repetitive or whatever. Please find the way that works for you. D2L, has everybody been on D2L yet? If you don't know how to work D2L, come up and talk to me. I'll help you. I'll run it up in lab over there. Email, please email me for anything. I don't really ever answer my phone up here in my office. I only sit at the desk there for about 2 hours a week usually. I gave you my cell phone number. I carry it with me. It usually goes off in class a couple of times during the term, and you'll laugh at me because I don't want your phone going off during class, but I'm old. I forget. This term I have 2 classes. I'm teaching you guys at 11, from 11 to 1 or so. And then my other class is 2:33, and it starts at 3 and goes from 3 to 6. So I'm going to probably be coming into a campus at about 9:30 every morning, and my office is in room 202, which is in this other, no, it's right above here. I'm sorry, we're at lecture. Yeah, it's right above here. If you go up to the front, go up the stairs, that's where all the offices are. You're welcome to come see me. If you really want a fixed amount of time to sit and chat, please email me, and I'll be sure I'm available. I use the time both before this class and between the 2 classes to do all my paperwork and write quizzes and print things off and all that kind of stuff. And the last thing I want to do is introduce you to Melissa. I hope I can find her during lab and bring her in and introduce her to you. If you don't know her, you need to. She's worth a ton to you in this class. Would you agree?
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, she's really great. And so please use her. She actually has gotten a new job this term, a little bit new. She's been given some hours working up in the Student Learning Center, tutoring, and you can sign up to have her tutor you, and it won't cost you anything. It's being paid for by the department, but she's available a certain number of hours, and I think she has those hours posted on the board over in the lab. So I always encourage you to use her because she's so good at making complex things simple. Okay? Oh, I know the last announcement I have to make. For those of you who were not in the class last term, I'm really an old man, and I was lecturing along in class one day, and I started feeling really bad, and I walked around to the front seat and had a seat, proceeded to faint and pass out, and the next thing I knew, I looked up, and I remember seeing your face, and I think I said, yeah, not you, but some of these folks over in here. Anyway, and then the next thing you knew, there was police there, and there was EMTs there, and all this bullshit. This has been going on for 15 years with me. I have been fainting, and I've been through every test in the book. I'm sure they've spent $500,000, and I'm not kidding, trying to diagnose my intermittent losses of consciousness. I've worn Holter monitors. I've worn different things for years, and they've never caught one because sometimes I go a year between these episodes. I've always got about 20 seconds of notification when they're coming on, so I've always been able to lay down. I haven't hit my head or had a real problem. Anyway, well, you guys will be glad to know that that about 11 months ago, I had what's called a loop recorder installed. And it's about the size of this thumb drive right here. And it's a computerized thing that they made a little incision on my chest here and stuck it in a pocket underneath the skin there. And then every month or so, I lay a phone thing on it, and it transmits every heartbeat for that month to the office, and they look at it. Anyway, so a few days after this spell with you guys, I did that. I laid the phone on it and sent it off. And they called me back and they said, hey, the other morning, did you have a problem? Did you have any symptoms? And I said, yeah, I was in class lecturing and I fainted. They said, well, you better get on in here because your heart stopped. You had asystole for 25 seconds. It just stopped. And they said, well, you need to come on in because you need a pacemaker. And so you'll all be glad to know that I now have a pacemaker. And so after 15 years of this malarkey, I have a pacemaker that hopefully...
How do you feel about
I feel like the bionic man.
We can't rebuild him. We have to acknowledge it.
Yeah, but so that's and if I faint again, don't do anything. Just let me go. I've had enough. Yeah.
I wish you don't
My
have to add
91-year-old grandfather just had his pacemaker battery replaced.
I'm looking forward to that. Every 10 years, I'm going to get to have a battery replacement. I hope I only have to have it once. And I've lived a good life. I've got a slideshow I'll show you someday. It shows you some of the places I've been and some of the places I've seen. I don't know if you saw the screen that was up here at the beginning, but there's a picture of Elvis Presley. I actually saw Elvis Presley live in Memphis, Tennessee once upon a time, 1974, I believe. I also saw the Beatles live when they came to Memphis, Tennessee in 1966. John, Paul, George, and Ringo. It was awesome. I've seen Sammy Davis Jr. I've seen Justin Bieber. Yes. I took my granddaughter to see Justin Bieber, and I have to tell you, the guy is, I thought he was incredible. The guy, this was about 4 years ago, and he is so talented, you couldn't believe it. Now, he's gotten weird a little bit since then. So let me tell you, he gave this concert, and he had all these dancers behind him, and you know, this little teenager I'm with is just going nuts, and I wasn't. But then they did about 25 minutes where he sat on this little thing, and they suspended him up to the ceiling of the Moda Center, and he comes right above you, you know, and it's just him. All the band has gone away. He's playing the guitar, and he's singing, and it was absolutely incredible. He sang probably 7 songs by himself with just his guitar as it was fantastic. It was fantastic. It's a side of him you've never seen before. I had never seen before and haven't seen since.
On YouTube, well, that's how he was founded, was on YouTube doing all that. He plays, I think, like 5 or 6 different instruments or something.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty smart.
He's very talented.
Yeah.
Years ago when his movie came out, me and my friend took her little sister to see it, and like we're like, Justin Bieber movie, like what's dumb.
But
Like, she wanted to go, and, it's like
and
we both came out with so much respect. Because
yeah. And how long did you wait in line for that?
We went a couple weeks after it came out. But, like,
I waited 3 hours to see that movie myself.
He turned into a little bit of a tool,
Yeah.
but he's a very talented
Yeah,
player.
it really is. Anyway, all right. So that's the last thing I have to tell you was about my pacemaker. I feel
I'm glad we got it.
you did it. Thank you,
Yeah.
team. You helped me. And they took the loop recorder out. So, but the pacemaker acts as the same thing. It sends the signal off and records everything as well.
Amazing how technology is advanced.
I'm sorry.
Amazing how technology is advanced.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Is
It really is.
cigarette pack?
Huh?
Is it more compact than small cigarette pack?
Oh yeah.
Because you always
It's,
told us during when I was a BLS instructor that you had like one way that kind of noticed it would be like this little small pack of cigarettes.
oh no, it's not near that big.
It's like
It's about that thin,
Oh wow.
and it's about this big. Yeah. Okay. All right. So please remember, if you attended 231 at PCC here, you should have already covered Chapter 12, neural tissues, and Chapter 13 on the spinal cord, spinal nerves, and spinal reflexes. If you haven't done that, you need to review that, okay? I'm not going to specifically ask you questions about that stuff, but most of that stuff gets redirected and talked about again in the brain chapters, which we're going to go into now. So I hate that we tear their neural system apart, like we do between 231 and 232, but I'm outvoted, and that's what happens. All right, here we go. The human brain ranges from about 750 cc's to 2100 cc's. About 97% of all of our brain tissue, of all of our neural tissue, is actually in the brain itself. The average brain weighs about 3 pounds. Those are stupid numbers. Just know that most of your neural tissue is in your brain, and that it doesn't matter how big your brain is. Albert Einstein's brain was no bigger than mine or yours, and just leave it at that. Most of what you need to learn in this chapter is included on these first few slides. You need to know that there are 6 major regions of the brain. You need to know what those regions are, and you need to know what they do. And here they are. The first one is the one you think of as your brain, your cerebrum. Your cerebrum is the gray matter up here on top. It's the part that you do all your thinking with. It's the one that you keep all your memories in. It's the one that interprets what you're looking at, interprets what you're hearing. The cerebrum is really what we think of as our brain. The cerebellum is a lower part of the brain, fits back here in back, sort of. And the cerebellum is the part of your brain that makes you coordinated. Now, think about what is involved when we stand on our legs. And I stand here like this. And if you watch me closely, you'll see that I'm moving forward a little bit and backward a little bit, from side to side a little bit. And the fact that I can do that and not really make a jerk out of myself is because I have a cerebellum that works. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the cerebellum is the thing that coordinates your muscle system, your muscles, and your position and everything. And the cerebellum, as I stand here, there's all these signals being sent to my brain, right? The afferent systems are sending information up to my brain. There are feeling things on the bottom of my foot that are saying, hey, Sessions, you've got a little bit too much weight on your front of your feet, and then you push back, and oh, now I got all of it's on my heels, and right and left, and oh, you bent your knees a little bit, and now, oh yeah, and we know where all of our joints are. Example is, I know, without looking at it, I know that I'm holding up one finger. Now, how do I know that? Proprioception. What does proprioception mean? But where are those fibers that tell me that information? Where are proprioceptive fibers found? In the joints, that's right. And in the skin. In other words, without looking, I know whether my elbow is bent or straight, right? Because my body is continually picking up on all of those feelings and sending them up to my brain to coordinate me. And when I start to walk, it allows that to all happen smoothly. You remember that thing called nerve or muscle recruitment, where you start to make a movement, but you needed to recruit a few more muscle fibers because you needed a few more to make it actually happen. Well, that all happens in the cerebellum. And I will show you some pictures of people who have problems with their cerebellum, and they look really weird. You've seen them, and then people with cerebellar ataxias and different cerebellar problems are very discoordinated. Yeah.
People with Parkinson's, is that involved with it?
That's involved, yes. Parkinson's is we'll talk about it when we get to it. It has to do with a nerve, a chemical, dopa, that we don't have enough of it, so you can't make it all work right. Okay, so that's the cerebellum. So the cerebellum is the one that coordinates the right and left sides. It helps you, it just makes your muscles work and allows you to move and all that stuff. The diencephalon and the mesencephalon are sort of mid portions of the brain. We will talk about them. They involve things like the hypothalamus, thalamus, pituitary gland, so forth. The pons. Pons is a part of the brain that connects everything to the cerebellum. So all of those fibers that come up with all that information about position and sensation come up. They take I just always think of the pons as where they take a right-hand turn and turn out into the cerebellum. And then go back through that same way. The pons is part of the coordination system dealing mainly with the cerebellum. And then the lowest part of your brain, which is called the medulla oblongata. And the medulla is the brain stem. Some people call other parts of that the brain stem. But I think of the medulla as the brain stem. It's the lowest part of your brain. Now, so what does your brain stem do for you?
Control breathing, heart rates.
All the things that you don't want to have to think about. It controls the things that are automatic. So when the mafia puts a hit out on a guy and they want him dead, and they really want him dead, that's why they shoot him in the back of the head, because what they're shooting for is the medulla. Because if you can put a bullet through the medulla, that person is dead. Why? Because their heart doesn't get any signals, their heart stops, they don't get any signals to breathe, anything. Okay? And as far as other things it does, think about eating. How many of you had breakfast this morning? Didn't your mother ever tell you that breakfast is the most important meal? Well, anyway, what that means for those of you who ate some breakfast is you have some food in your stomach. Now, how many of you have said to yourself, okay, it's time for my stomach to contract and digest that food? Right? We don't think about that. How many of you have thought, oh, it's time for my heart to beat? Yeah, that'd be great. And you know what? I'm exercising, so maybe I ought to get my heart to beat a little faster. Those are all automatic things, autonomic things. We're going to talk a lot about those things, but they all are pretty much controlled in the medulla oblongata, the lowest part of the brain. Let's go through those one by one. The cerebrum is the largest part. It's the one that controls your higher mental functions. It's divided into two halves, a right and left cerebral hemispheres. And we'll come back to this, but you know that you girls are always thought of as being left-brained. Isn't that right? And guys are thought to be more right-brained.
Wouldn't it be the opposite, left?
Man, I don't know. It's all garbage to me. Anyway, I was just a surgeon. I didn't think about this stuff. I'm teaching out of my field here. Anyway, but just one thing to remember is that the cerebrum is the gray matter. It's the stuff on the outside. It's the stuff that's got all the little squiggly things running through it, and it's what also referred to as the neural cortex, or cerebral cortex. It has ridges that are called gyri. You need to know this. It has little depressions between them that are called sulci. They're the little canyons in between the ridges. And it has a couple of really deep grooves called fissures. We will talk about each one of them very specifically. Okay, the cerebellum is the second largest part of the brain. It's the one back in the back. and it coordinates all kinds of body movements and enables you to do things like walk and stand and so forth. 2 hemispheres, right and left. It's kind of covered on the outside with what's called the cerebellar cortex. The cerebellar cortex is also gray matter on the outside. The diencephalon is broken into 3 parts. It's underneath. You don't really see these parts from the outside. I'll show you pictures here in a minute. The left thalamus, right thalamus, and hypothalamus. That's a really sleazy way to make it into 3 parts, isn't it? Calling one the right side and one the left side. And the hypothalamus is kind of in the middle below them. Anyway. Thalamus, we're going to talk about the thalamus a fair amount. The thalamus is kind of a relay station. And almost all of your sensations that come up to your brain, if they're powerful enough, they stop at your thalamus and they form a little synapse there. And then if there's enough signals coming, then it will relay it on up to the cortex, and you'll think about it. Now, here's an example. Some of you have probably heard this story before. As we've been sitting here and I've been talking, how many of you have been noticing the sound of that fan in that projector up there? A few of you have noticed it? Yeah. You didn't notice it for long, did you? Because what happens is our brain says, oh yeah, there's a sound, but it's constant, and it's boring, and it's just, I don't really need to concentrate on this. And you kind of forget about it, right? Now, some of you will say, oh, damn it, I hear it all the time. It bugs me the whole class. And I say, okay, then let's talk about this one. How many of you have been sitting here thinking about the weight of your shirt on your right shoulder? Nobody's been thinking about that, right? But yet you've been feeling it the whole time, okay? So when I use those examples there to describe what happens in the thalamus. The thalamus is the thing that decides whether or not to relay it and whether to process it and send it on up to the brain to think about, okay? The hypothalamus we'll talk about in length, especially when we get into the endocrine system, because the hypothalamus makes some hormones, and it controls the pituitary gland. It also controls our emotions, and it controls a lot of our autonomic functions. So some of those things like heart rate and things like growth and development, things about, women having periods and men getting hair on their chest, all of that stuff is caused in the hypothalamus at some point. The pituitary gland we will talk a lot about in 2 more chapters. It's a major endocrine gland. It connects to the hypothalamus via a little stalk that you'll find. It hangs off the bottom of your brain. And the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus are really the main interactive point between the nervous system and the endocrine system. What's that mean? Well, the nervous system is our brain and nerves, right? And it tends to react very quickly. So if I'm walking along over here and I step on a nail, I pull back, I lift my foot up off of that, and I react very quickly. However, things like that are slow to control, but yet our body really needs to control them, is things like how much are our bones going to grow, how tall are we going to get, how old are we going to be when we start having periods, ladies? Basically all the things that our body has to control that yet are pretty slow. And they're usually controlled by hormones. And hormones are chemicals that are released from the glands out into our blood, and then they travel around our body to affect the effect that they need to make. Okay? So that's the pituitary gland because it's the major connector between the hypothalamus here, which is strictly part of the brain, and all the other hormones, all the other glands that make hormones, like your thymus, your thyroid, your ovaries, your testicles, and so forth. Yeah.
So the pituitary gland controls all of the hormones in your body?
Pretty much. Yes, there's a couple of them that are controlled directly from the hypothalamus. The posterior pituitary gland is really part of the hypothalamus. Yes, I think a good answer is yes to that question. The brainstem is the lower parts of the brain, referred to as the mesencephalon, the pons, and the medulla. I've always really thought of the medulla as the brainstem, and these other two as sort of connectors in between. But nonetheless, what the whole idea of the brainstem is it connects information that's coming up from the spinal cord and carries it up to the cerebrum and connects it in with the cerebellum as well. The mesencephalon is called the midbrain. The midbrain helps us maintain consciousness, helps us see, hear, and all the associated reflexes that are associated with that. The pons is that connector that connects between the brainstem and the cerebellum to help us maintain coordination. All right, this says it's involved in both somatic and visceral motor control. What's somatic mean, Jerry? Well, okay, somatic referring to the body. Let's be more specific.
Voluntary muscle control.
Voluntary muscle control, yeah. So what kind of muscles would we call those?
Skeletal.
The skeletal muscles, right. The muscles that are under our control are the somatic muscles. And when we talk about the somatic nervous system, we're talking about the part of the brain that controls all of our muscles. Visceral motor control might be what?
Involuntary.
The involuntary stuff, such as
Throwing up. You can't control that.
throwing up. Very good. I've never gotten that answer before. Huh?
Glands.
I'm sorry?
Glands.
Your glands, yes. Yes. Whether you're sweating or not, controlling the other endocrine hormones as well. Medulla is the brainstem to the spinal cord, and it regulates the autonomic functions that we talked about already: heart rate, blood pressure, digestion, so forth. Okay, so here's what they look like in a picture. Let me go turn the light off a little bit. But these are the 6 portions that we just have been mentioning and talking about. The biggest one, of course, is the cerebrum up top. So it's the big squiggly parts up here on top. The other part that you see is the cerebellum, which is illustrated in blue here. It's not really blue. Down here at the bottom. It has kind of a squiggly appearance, however, that makes it quite obvious because it looks a lot different than the squiggles up here. That's the cerebellum, and then the brainstem. That's really all you can see. And then to see these other parts, which are listed over here, you have to kind of peel the brain off. And that enables you to see this is the thalamus. Here, and the hypothalamus is kind of the lower part of it. Here's the pituitary gland. This is the mesencephalon, which is just a bunch of connecting fibers, really. Here's the pons that I mentioned. It has a distinctive look to it, and all that information that comes up through the spinal cord gets sent around through the pons around to the cerebellum, as I mentioned. And then below that is the medulla oblongata. So there's the 6 major portions of the brain. You really need to know those 6 things. Yeah.
I read an article once about a brain. I guess this is really rare, but it happens sometimes where it doesn't have any of the squiggles. It's just smooth. And it was saying that like someone like that, they don't live very long. Usually they die. But this brain they found, the person I guess had lived for a while, like in their teens or so.
Yeah. Squiggles.
Holding.
I don't know. I just always assumed it was to make more surface area, but I don't really know. Good point. Your book goes into great detail on the embryological development of the brain, and we talk about embryology and how our organs develop. That's the very last chapter of A&P, which if you think about it, it sort of makes sense, because until you know what all the systems are, it's kind of hard to figure out how they developed. And so the very last chapter, I think it's chapter 27 of our book, is about development and embryology. And this chapter goes through quite a lot of really wasted space, I think, talking about the different parts of the brain. The prosencephalon, the mesencephalon, the rhombencephalon, the telencephalon, the diencephalon, the rhombencephalon. You don't need to know any of that. I think that's just a waste of your time. Just know that the higher parts of the brain become the cerebrum, and the lower parts of the brain become the medulla. And I think what we need to know for this class is this line right here, those 6 things that we've already talked about, okay? So you're not going to see these things listed on tests. I just don't believe that's important. Let's stop here on ventricles of the brain. And I think what we'll do is we will go over to lab. We'll do our introduction to the lab. I'll show you the really exciting safety video. Yeah. And then maybe we'll lecture a little bit longer, because there's really not anything to do in lab at this point, I don't think. Okay? I'll see you over there.
So in regards to brain,
What?
in regards to
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's
I'll have
you can certainly do that, but I also tell you that just with mine, it's right up there, it'll record questions from the back of the room. These Apple guys were pretty damn smart.
Yes, I got a question for you.
But I'll have all the ready to go for my next one.
Okay. Taking fluid out.
Craziest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Not the craziest thing I've ever seen.
That doesn't sound like any fun.
No fun at all.
Oh yeah.
I feel like she might lose her eyesight.
You think what? You might lose her eyesight?
Possibly, yeah. I was doing a little research and there's really not a whole lot you can do to it.